it's just such a great time to be a older young adult. Like, I finally survived my early 20s. The 30s are looking a little spooky, but you know, I can vibe right where I'm at. Like, I feel really secure in myself right now. Ooh, you want to be old so bad. You're not a dying breed. You're still Gen Z. You want to be the chief flop of the What I Do Olympics so bad. Well, no, I just think that like I'm really secure in my age right now, but I do think I'm a little bit too old to really relate to a lot of you Gen Z. Isn't that right, guys? I think you're just a little bit too small being kiddo to be a part of us millennials. Like, do you even remember 9/11? See, this is what I'm talking about. Too old for Gen Z, too young for millennials. What I do now? Hey guys, it's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. I apologize again for another poorly executed skit. Today we are talking about a generational topic that has been brought up multiple times in the comment section of a lot of my Gen Z videos, and also a topic that has been brought up a lot online over the past couple of years as Gen Z has become more of a hot topic. The special and alleged micro generation that is the Zillennials. Really the group of cuspers that sit right in between the cutoff between Gen Z and millennials. And in this video, we're going to be talking about microgenerations and cuspers, mainly Zillennials, but also Zillennials, Xillennials, Xillennial. You do. It's spelled like this. However you say that. Basically the cuspers of Gen X and millennials, as well as what this one source calls Zalphas, Gen Z and Gen Alpha cuspers. Because I think the concept of microgenerations is a conversation that is not had nearly as much as it should, because there are some questions around the validity of said cuspers being their own microgeneration. And I think this is gonna be a real fun time, because while generational cutoffs and lines are temporally set, socially there is a little bit more ambiguity to these cutoffs. And we're gonna talk about all that in this video. This is the time to really take a deep dive into Zillennials, the microgeneration that's too old for Gen Z and too young for millennials. Now, if content like this does interest you, then be sure to definitely subscribe if you have not already, and leave a like on this video because it helps out a ton. You can also follow me on my social medias here at Imurgency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And before we get all heated and riled up talking about the generational divide, the generation wars, let's take a second to actually calm down, recenter, and possibly get some sleep with this video sponsor, Oslo Sleep Buds. These babies are the real deal. Oslo Sleep Buds are the science-driven one-stop shop for the best sleep of your life. And what's really special about these sleep buds in comparison to other earbuds and headphones is that they're designed to comfortably block out sleep-disturbing sounds and replace that noise with whatever may soothe you. I've been loving these sleep buds over the past month because they fit so comfortably and almost flat in the ear, so that when you are sleeping on your side, it is comfortable and you don't have something like protruding and like banging into your ear. They also are noise masking. So if you pop in your sleep buds while you sleep and put on some of their soothing sounds, ASMR, or just any other form of noise you care to stream, you can tune out a lot of the noise you don't want to hear and just focus on the stuff that relaxes you. The Oslo Sleep Buds hold a 10-hour charge, so they're fit for a good night's sleep. And like I was alluding to before, you can stream anything you want on them, whether that be podcasts, audiobooks, music, ASMR, guided meditations, whatever, what have you. These are really great for people that live with roommates, loud family, or busy or otherwise noisy areas that normally impede your sleep. Thank you so much, Oslo, for partnering with me for this video. Get the best sleep of your life by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in my description, or by using code IMUR, that's IMUR, to get $10 off your pair of Oslo Sleep Buds. Thank you so much again, Oslo, for sponsoring this video. Let's continue talking about Zillennials. So in our conversation about Zillennials and microgenerations, I think it's important to start off with some common ground and talking about what exactly constitutes a microgeneration. According to innovationstrategy.com, microgenerations are subgroups of macrogenerations that provide a deeper level of understanding into each generation. For example, Gen Z is divided into Z tribe and Z alpha, while millennials are divided into pro, mid, and Nova Vu. Nova Vu? What? Actually, maybe not this source. I don't know what a Nova Vu is. Novu? Sound it out, Rumi. No, Novu. No. Yeah, no. Let's go a little off script here. Basically, microgenerations have been more so socially created generations within larger generations. So the ones that we typically know of, the boomers, the millennials, the Gen Xers, the Gen Zers, and Gen Alpha, that tend to be born and grow up near the border of each of these generations. And like I was alluding to before, generational lines are pretty much hard set. And a lot of the beauty of a generation is that there is this sense of camaraderie and shared experience, because all of the people that are born during a certain era generally experience the same things in similar ways, which cause them to have collective similar beliefs and outlooks and perspective on the world that they grew up in. That's why we see these disagreements within generations, like the Gen X rise that was happening this summer for some reason, or this collective group of people that go through these shared experiences that are are different from another generation that has another set of experiences, just tend to clash based on their difference in perspective and understanding. But when we talk about Zillennials though, Zillennials refer to a small cohort born between the late 1990s and the early 2000s. Said by Deborah Carr, the professor of sociology and director of the Center of Innovation for Social Science at Boston University. So this lady knows what she's talking about. She goes on to say that they're on the cusp of Gen Z and millennials, thus the mashup label of Zillennial. Now, when we talk about these generational date cutoffs, millennials are said to be born between 1981 and 1996, with Gen Z starting from 1997 to 2012. But where the discrepancy happens is where people put that cutoff, but that cutoff is commonly disputed. You're going to see different dates depending on what source you look at, with most sources saying that the cutoff is somewhere between 1993 and 1998, but some can push as far to the early 2000s for the cutoff. And I think the reason why there is this difference in establishing when this generation starts and stops has contributed to the creation of this microgeneration of Zillennials. Because what happened between this era that really differentiates those that grew up in the millennial generation versus Gen Z generation is the internet and social media. Like, that's the major differentiator. Generation Z is said to be the first generation to grow up with the internet, whereas millennials are the first generation to grow up into the internet. And Zillennials kind of exist in this weird in-between. Zillennials grew up in a time where they had access to the internet, but still experienced portions of life that did not have to do with social media at all. They didn't have social media access, they didn't have phones, they didn't always have Wi-Fi everywhere, and got to experience a little bit more of that shift from the old world to the new technological social media world that we live in today. In my notes here, it says that they remember brands like Woolworths being a part of their childhood when Nintendo Wii was a more popular choice than the latest Xbox or PlayStation console, and most remember a time before Google was the most used search engine. Like, really early internet core.
I'm a Zillennial. I'm not old enough to actually remember any of the 90s, but I'm automatically grouped as a 90s kid. I'm a Zillennial. The internet raised me too. You could just only use it on the family computer. I'm a Zillennial. My friends and I talk to strangers in chat rooms for fun because no one older than us knew what actually happened on the internet. I'm a Zillennial. The only thing I really remember about 9/11 is that everyone came home from work early. I'm a Zillennial. I was 10 when Taylor Swift became Taylor Swift, and also my Roman Empire. I'm a Zillennial. I understand and relate to Gen Z way more than any other generation, but I'm considered too old to be Gen Z. And I understand nothing that the millennials are saying most of the time. I'm a Zillennial, and I got to grow up in a really cool in-between where you played outside with your friends and drank from a water hose and also had an iPhone. And I think that's pretty cool.
Zillennials are said to have more patience than Gen Z when it comes to things like technology because they've experienced a time where things weren't as instantly gratified or super quick to load or give you information like they are now, which makes them fall more in line with their millennial counterparts. But where Zillennials kind of distance themselves, they say that everyone considered a Zillennial is old enough to have been alive during 9/11, but not old enough to remember where they were or what they were doing. Though there is some discrepancy in this, if the Zillennial cutoff is around 1993, because they would be like 10 or 11, and I think at that time you'd kind of know what's going on, and definitely remember life pre-9/11 when it comes to things like low airport security, not needing IDs, being able to bring full size whatever you want through the airport, being able to have your family walk up with you to your gate. And millennials are also able to see the cultural difference in effects pre and post 9/11 that a lot of Zillennials and Gen Z just have no consciousness of, because while Zillennials were alive during 9/11, they weren't really conscious for it, and Gen Z itself grew up in this post 9/11 world, so we don't really have the context or the reference of life before 9/11. And I think that's really interesting because it really shows the three distinct different perspectives for each generation, and why being a Zillennial is so particularly confusing and feeling so out of place, because you kind of have knowledge of both but not the full scope of either, if that makes sense. Which is why people born in that cusp era are such strong proponents of being a Zillennial and pushing for that micro generation, because there just are different cultural identifiers that exist outside of their realms and then also exclusively for that age group of people. Another cultural identifier for Zillennials / Gen Z is the pandemic. The pandemic paused everyone's lives, but definitely not equally, with a lot of young people losing out on a lot of early life milestones and having some of their younger life stages be delayed. Younger Gen Z missed out on things like prom and high school graduation, while older Gen Z missed out on parts of college, like things like not being able to study abroad, not being on campus, or just not really having a in-person graduation. Like, I know for myself, I was a sophomore in college when lockdowns hit, and I was supposed to go study abroad in Spain, and that never happened, but that's okay. I still minored in Spanish, but luckily I was still able to have a prom and a high school and college graduation. But some of my friends that are a little bit older missed out on having a college graduation, and some of my friends that are a little bit younger missed out on prom and high school graduation, which all impact us in different ways. And going further on that, And something that kind of relates to a past video that I posted talking about Gen Z in the workplace is that when it came time for older Gen Z and Zillennials to come into the workforce, we entered the workforce in an era where everything was remote. And many of us did not have the context or experience of working an adult job that required an in-person attendance. And one of the challenges that older Gen Z and Zillennials face is learning how to acclimate to an in-person workforce. And that's something that Zillennials and Gen Z have in common, in contrast to millennials who have had that context and experience of what work was like prior to the pandemic, as they already had that grasp of workplace culture and experience with that socialization. In the notes, which also were done by my friend Shemaya, so shout out to them, Zillennials are the exact group to fit the born too late to X, born too early for Y, old enough to be a Z meme format, which kind of perfectly encapsulates the Zillennial experience of just being this in-between generation. I find this next part of the video pretty interesting because we're framing the conversation now over social media and specifically how each generation and microgeneration interacted and started engaging with social media based on certain time periods. Because I think that really informs and explains how different generations use different platforms on social media and different facets of the internet based on how old they were when they came out and how integral they really were to these different generations' childhoods and upbringings. And I think that this is really interesting, especially for Zillennials, as they are the generation that has experienced almost every form of the internet, as well as almost every form of social media to date, as a part of their youth and coming of age journey. Now let's start with Facebook, or Meta. Facebook was founded back in 2004 and is typically hailed as being the millennial and Gen X platform, as it kind of carried over as a social media giant post MySpace, which was founded back in 2003 and hailed as the largest social media platform from 2005 to 2009. And speaking to that general age of the internet, the 2005 to 2006s, the eldest millennial during that period would be around 22 to 23, while the youngest would be around 7 or 8, with the oldest of Gen Z being around 5 or 6 to not even a concept yet, and Zillennials fitting around that middle ground, with the oldest around 10 to 11 and the youngest around 6 to 7. So truly around that age of the internet where most of these social media platforms are coming about, it's the millennials and the Zillennials that are growing up with them, because Gen Z at this point is just getting started. Same with Instagram around 2010. Oldest millennials around 29 years old, oldest Gen Z is around 13, and the oldest Zillennial is around 17. And then when we're talking about the internet, there's a whole concept of online gaming, because early online games were a crucial part of the Zillennial and older Gen Z experience, along with millennials as well, but we're talking about the Z's right now. Zillennials have fond memories of things like Club Penguin, Pop Tropica, Millsbury, Littlest Pet Shop, Neopets, cool math games, and much, much more. And one thing that's interesting to know about a lot of these fan favorite, critically acclaimed, and popular online games of this time are that they are mostly like life simulator games. And I think that's interesting. I'm not going to dive too deeply into that, but I think there definitely is something there, something to be said about the in-between generation being interested in life simulator games that are actually the in-between between real life labor and tasks and digital life and labor. Like I think of things like Sims being super popular for older Gen Z, Zillennials, and younger millennials, but specifically that Zillennial group being super interested in these life simulator games. Their experience being the in-between generation and being interested in games that sort of fill that in-between, that gap between real life and video game. I don't know. I don't want to be the friend that's too woke, but clock that just a little bit. And where Zillennials especially shine is in the workplace. Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier in this video, and we talked about Gen Z in the workplace in a past video. You should definitely go check that out if you haven't already. As we know, Gen Z has been setting some firmer boundaries in the workplace, really disrupting the space and being the world's most hated apparently because of it. Due to things like quiet quitting, acting your wage, the professionalism issue, the out of office emails of it all, there is just this general disconnect that a lot of Gen Z have with the workplace and that a lot of the workplace have with Gen Z. Because again, like I mentioned in my past video, Gen Z entered the workplace and was socialized into the workplace in a way that was different from every other generation, because no other generation came into the workforce during a pandemic, during an era where life was completely behind a screen and at least 6 feet away. Because when the world started opening up again, a lot of Gen Z in the workplace did not know, or I won't say did not know, but had to acclimate for the first time to socializing in the real world and learning in real time how to act, react, advocate for yourself in these in-person spaces that they had not been acclimated to prior. And for a lot of Gen Z, that's something that happened 1, 2, maybe 3 years already into their career. But that's kind of in contrast to the oldest of these Zillennials that have had that exposure to office life and to office work prior to the pandemic. And that's sort of where Zillennials exist to bridge that gap between Gen Z and Millennial, because Millennials, they've experienced office work before and they were able to readjust a little bit easier. Zillennials have a bit of that and have the understanding of Gen Z and understand the Gen Z struggle and issues, because some of them are technically still Gen Z and experience the culture, life, memes, whatever, what have you of Gen Z, but come in with the understanding and the knowledge and wisdom that some Millennials have for just being older. And now to sort of take a step back to microgenerations as a whole, I think that microgenerations are so interesting just because they exist in this really critical and narrow point in time where it seems like there is this shift in culture. They are born and grow up during this transitionary period where they get to fully experience life before and after whatever technological or social advancement that the world goes through. Like the Xlennials, or however you say the Gen X millennial cuspers. They grew up in a world where the internet was just being invented, and they have complete knowledge and experience with the world prior to the internet, prior to these technological advancements, as well as understanding some of the early internet still being part millennial and seeing that cultural shift towards the internet and towards things that happened online. And I think that the same thing is going to happen with the Gen Z and Gen Alpha cuspers, the Zalphas of the world, if you will. Because I think that the cultural identifier that's going to happen between Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and actually even more so between the cuspers of Gen Alpha and whatever generation comes after them, I think it might be Gen Beta. Damn, I feel sorry for them. Gen Beta does not sound as cool as Gen Alpha, is the technological advancement of AI. Actually, now that I think about it, that might be more of a Gen Alpha and Gen Beta thing, because I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha is like growing up during the height of social media and the internet, and then growing up in this era that we are in now where it's kind of like post-peak social media where this is just the norm. The oldest Gen Alpha right now is around 12 or 13, so they're kind of coming into, so a lot of the older ones are coming into AI, where I think that the ones that are going to be born soon, and actually, hold on, if you want to feel really old, catch this. The next generation is about to start next year. The next generation starts in 2025. Gen Beta, the first Gen Beta is going to be born in less than 20 days. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That makes me sick to my stomach. I'm sorry. And I think that and I'm going to coin this right now, that the cuspers for Gen Alpha and Gen Beta, the ABs or the AB generation is going to be the transition from more self-serving algorithms to AI and artificial intelligence. And growing up in a world where that is the norm. Like that's not something that was invented during your lifetime. It's something that you were born into. And that really made me feel old. What do you mean Gen Z is about to be 2 generations old? Hello? Regardless, answer the question, do Zillennials actually exist? Are Zillennials a genuine microgeneration? Are microgenerations really a thing? I would have to say yes, because there are certain cultural identifiers that do distinguish Zillennials from every other generation in a way where they're able to relate, but not necessarily fully be in. They are not like other girls. They truly exist in 2 worlds. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, y'all. I just wanted to talk about Zillennials because I think they deserve some love and attention, as we've been talking about both Millennials and Gen Z. And some of y'all are Zillennials and have been commenting that you relate to some things and you don't relate to others. And some of y'all have been requesting for a Zillennial video, so I hope you're happy. But yeah, y'all, thank you so much for watching. I wanna hear from you now. What do you think about Zillennials and cusp generations? Do you think they're real? Do you not think they're real? And are you a Zillennial, a Zalpha, or a Zillennial? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching again. If you're new to the channel, then definitely subscribe, leave a like on this video. Follow me on my socials at Imurgency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. But other than that, y'all, I will see you in the next video. Peace.